And at Chicago's O'Hare Airport, Customs and Border Protection says it seized more than 1,500 overseas shipments containing nearly 20,000 counterfeit U.S. driver's licenses. That's in the first 6 months of 2020 alone.
According to a report, U.S. Customs and Border Protection has seized most of the counterfeit license shipments. The majority came from Hong Kong and mainland China, with a few from South Korea and the U.K. CBP's acting area port director in Chicago, Ralph Piccirilli, called the counterfeits very realistic. He said criminal organizations use these counterfeit IDs to avoid attracting attention to their illegal activities, adding that the fakes can lead to disastrous consequences. CBP said most of the fake IDs were made for college-age students. The department further explained that the documents can lead to identity theft, worksite enforcement, critical infrastructure protection, and fraud linked to immigration-related crimes, like human smuggling and human trafficking. Last fall, CBP agents in Kentucky intercepted nearly 3,000 fake U.S. licenses and more than 3,000 blank cardstocks for printing counterfeit licenses. The shipment was on its way to New York City.
Kowtowing to China, a new report says Hollywood is increasingly caving into pressure from the Chinese regime to censor and alter its films. The lead author says this silences dissenting voices and can skew global perceptions.
Hollywood has kowtowed to China for years by altering and censoring its films for the Chinese regime's stamp of approval. And a new report by rights group PEN America shows that things haven't changed. Through insider interviews and blatant examples of censorship, the group backs up its claim that Beijing has sent a clear message to the filmmaking world that filmmakers who criticize China will be punished, but that those who play ball will be rewarded. The report says censorship comes in two ways. Either the regime asks for it or filmmakers censor themselves to get in on China's $9 billion cinema market. A recent example of this censorship was in a trailer for the upcoming sequel film, Top Gun: Maverick. The directors removed the Japanese and Taiwan flag patches from Tom Cruise's jacket. To give some background, the history between China, Taiwan, and Japan is strained. It seems like a small alteration, but in a statement to the Epoch Times, the leading author at PEN America said cumulatively such censoriousness cuts against artistic and cultural freedom, silences dissenting voices, and can skew the global perceptions that are shaped by powerful films. According to the report, many producers and screenwriters who were interviewed wanted their identities hidden, afraid that it would hurt their careers if they criticized the CCP's influence in Hollywood openly. One producer who's worked on several China-backed projects said, "Most people do not burn China because there's an expectation of I'll never work again." Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
The short video sharing app TikTok is on the clock. It needs to be bought by an American company or else it will be permanently banned from the U.S. due to national security risks. We talked to an American expert about whether this will be effective in keeping our country's data secure.
Popular and controversial video sharing app TikTok could be under new management as a result of the Trump administration's recent actions. President Trump signed an executive order to ban the Chinese company from the U.S. unless it is bought by an American company within 45 days. Chief Marketing Officer of agency partner Interactive, Adam Raziri, said that TikTok is not privately owned, but an extension of the Chinese Communist Party. He said that TikTok's operations in the U.S. could threaten national security.
In the CCP's form of rule, there is no private ownership. So ultimately, you could say TikTok is owned by ByteDance, but really, TikTok is owned by the CCP right now. So until that changes, there's not going to be any way for them to actually do business under the current administration.
U.S. tech giant Microsoft said it was interested in buying 30% of TikTok. The company stated it's aware of Trump's concerns and will subject the company to a security check. Raziri said, however, that Microsoft cannot guarantee that it won't be hacked by TikTok's previous owner.
Those guys know everything about TikTok. They know everything about the algorithm, the code base, how it works, how the data is stored, how the data is leveraged. They really know everything. So, while Microsoft can do everything within their absolute powers to run security audits and to hire teams that are separate from the existing teams that are running TikTok, because there obviously is a fairly strong U.S. operation, they can only do so much. Right?
TikTok and other Chinese state-run companies have a history of censoring voices critical of the CCP and stealing personal data to enhance their surveillance technology. But Raziri says that the U.S. can be more at ease knowing Microsoft will do something positive with TikTok.
So they want to introduce cool apps to the market. They want to introduce cool headsets and AR technology and things like that, leveraging TikTok data. So at least we can take comfort in knowing that Microsoft will use that data to make something really cool. And not to really influence our decision-making in a negative way.
Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella expects the deal to be done by September 15th. ByteDance has until September 20th before it is outlawed in the U.S.
U.S. sanctions on Huawei are taking effect. A company executive says it's running out of chips for smartphone production. And its upcoming Mate 40 could be the last Huawei smartphone to feature its own chip.
Huawei says it's running out of smartphone chips because of U.S. sanctions. The company's consumer unit president Richard Yu said production of its most advanced chips will stop September 15th. And he said the company is unable to make its own chips. Last year, Washington cut off Huawei's access to U.S. components. And in May, the Trump administration barred vendors around the world from using U.S. tech to make components for Huawei. Yu said this year might be the last generation of Huawei Kirin high-end chips because chip producers stopped accepting orders after the second round of sanctions. Now Huawei has no chips and no supply for smartphone production. In June, Huawei became the world's #1 smartphone brand, surpassing Samsung for the first time. Demand was strong in China, but sales abroad fell 27% from a year earlier. The Trump administration, the Federal Communications Commission, and others have labeled Huawei a national security threat. A former Chinese military engineer founded Huawei in 1987. Huawei denies allegations it helps the Chinese regime spy on users. But under Chinese law, all citizens and organizations must help with national intelligence efforts. Washington is lobbying allies to exclude the tech giant from their networks because of security risks.
Online shopping for the holidays could get expensive thanks to the pandemic. That's if it's delivered by the UPS. The company says it will add surcharges for delivery on big items, but it won't affect customers buying small goods. The surcharge will cost between $1 and $4, and the cost can also vary depending on whether its delivery is via ground or air. UPS ships more than 25,000 packages per week. As the job market slowly recovers, some are getting their jobs back faster, while others still have it tougher.
The U.S. job market is slowly recovering. 1.8 million jobs were added in July. But it seems the recovery is not balanced, with the low-skilled labor market recovering faster than high-skilled ones. Friday's Labor Department data showed employment in leisure and hospitality industries increased the most, making up about 1/3 of the jobs gains last month.
The low-skilled labor market is losing a lot of employment, but it's re-employing also very fast. The high-skilled labor market is losing much less employment, but when you're out of work, unless you're in high tech as an industry, it's very hard to find another job.
Miranda Meyerson is one of them. This year, she started a new job as a strategic partnerships manager at a nonprofit in California. But due to the pandemic, she was laid off after a few months, along with 2/3 of the company's staff. She had to put all future plans on hold, including her wedding.
So I really feel like I've been completely knocked off the trajectory that I've been trying to build for my entire adult life.
She's been trying to find a new job, even broadened her job search. But the daily grind is frustrating, and competition for good-paying jobs is fierce.
And most of the time, you don't hear anything back. Occasionally, I hear back and say, I've heard a couple things. We filled this position, but we really like you, and we're going to keep your, resume on file.
And for those positions not filled yet, some are offering lowered salaries and asking employees to work remotely.
About 2/3 of GDP right now is being produced by home-based workers, which is amazing. I mean, it's quite astounding. The U.S. economy is a home-based economy.
But Bloom says remote working could be adding drag to the job market's recovery, as it makes it hard to hire inexperienced workers. He thinks the economy's recovery will be partly dependent on how soon we can see a broadly available vaccine.
Weather forecasters have upped their predictions for this year's hurricane season. An expert compares 2020 to the most active storm season on record.
An expert predicts a lot more storm and hurricane activity are yet to come this year. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, watches weather changes affecting the U.S.
We're predicting now 19 to 25 named storms, of which we think 7 to 11 will become hurricanes, and 3 to 6 of those could become major hurricanes. So this is a lot of activity.
He says the numbers are above season averages of 12 storms, 6 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. 2005 holds the record for storm activity. Bell thinks 2020 will be very active, but not as active as 2005.
Comparing now to 2005, we've had a record 9 named storms already to date. 7 of those have been tropical storms only. If you look back to 2005, we had already had 2 major hurricanes.
He says 2005 conditions were still more favorable for hurricanes than current conditions. But he says NOAA predictions mean the U.S., Mexico, and the Caribbean could get a lot of storms that make landfall.
So whether it's a record season or not is really secondary to the fact that there's a lot of hurricanes and major hurricanes still to come.
In a normal year, about 90% of storm activity comes after August 6th, with mid-August to mid-October as peak season. The most destructive storm so far has been this month's Hurricane Isaias. It killed at least 9 people and left millions without power.